Calling to order the third portion of our meeting of the Public Facilities Commission today, dealing with the Boston Transportation Department.
Good morning, Commissioners. Before us today is James Galuli. He's the Deputy Commissioner for the Boston Transportation Department, and Brian Valancourt. He's the Manager of the Planning and Permitting Department for AECom Technical Services Incorporated. Before you today is a vote request concerning an order of taking. The order of taking includes various property interests located in Dorchester and Roxbury for the Blue Hill Avenue and Warren Street traffic signal improvements projects. Noted in the agenda are each of the property addresses, and before you today is a PowerPoint presentation which will cover each individual property address. Jim and Brian, if you would present the vote request, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Commissioners, for entertaining us on a vote today. We came in back in June and introduced to your staff, the project, and have been working closely with them and answering a lot of their questions. And I think as a result of that, have a much more polished presentation for you this morning. And I thank them for that. Today with me is our team, and our team includes two other individuals from the Boston Transportation Department, Pat Hoey and Tracy Lithcutt, who have been involved in doing an awful lot of contacts with the property owners over the course of this undertaking. We also have Henry Lutine and David Suarez from the Law Department. And our consultant working on this project is AECom. Sitting next to me on my right is Brian Valancourt, and Melissa Ryan is sitting in the audience. And they've been instrumental, and will be covering, Brian will be covering much of the detail of this presentation after my introductory remarks. Quick overview of the project is that we're here once again having brought a couple of other TIP projects to you. Those are the Transportation Improvement Program projects that are federally and state funded. And this year's project is a $3.6 million improvement project along the Warren Street and Blue Hill Avenue corridor, which is intended to bring much better coordination of the traffic signals and an improvement to several of the traffic signals in a corridor that runs through 16 intersections with traffic signals. When we complete this project, we'll have state-of-the-art communications back to our traffic center for all these signals, and we'll be able to better coordinate bus traffic as well as general traffic and have a much clearer handle on the condition of the operation of our signals. Many of those signals, out of the 16 we're involved with, only 5 of them are doing work that has implications for right-of-way. The 5 intersections that have implications for right-of-way are in that condition because we're actually doing substantial improvements in replacing the traffic signals with new equipment. And as we do that, it gets us into rebuilding sidewalks and handicap ramps, because we can't use the federal money and the state dollars without bringing those up to a modern status. And when we do those types of improvements, sidewalks and handicap ramps, we have 2 implications. One implication is that the space that's a level up above the handicapped ramp needs to be sufficient to qualify as a legal sidewalk. And that gets us into a category which requires the permanent easements. The other category, we also have a category of temporary easements, which are typically driven by 2 things. One would be that the sidewalk to the public, to anybody walking through there, would look like it's all one sidewalk, whereas some of the sidewalk sits upon the city's right-of-way, and some of it might sit upon the first foot or so of the private property adjacent to the right-of-way. In those cases, we wouldn't want to leave a patchwork of new sidewalk, strip of tired, old-looking sidewalk with bubble gum stuck to it. So what we do is, as a courtesy, we do to the public who are going to use that sidewalk, is we improve the whole sidewalk, and that means we need to temporarily have an easement to get onto the property to replace that last strip of concrete. Otherwise, a temporary easement might be driven by the fact that we need to temporarily set upon the property owner's property while we're doing the construction in the public right-of-way. So those are the two general conditions that lead us to need temporary easements. And we're taking 4-year temporary easements because we need to have the easements in place when we record them, and they need to then hold in place for us to do the work after the project, and then is advertised by Mass DOT and awarded, the contract's then awarded, and then allows for the fact that the phasing of the work across these 16 intersections might take place early in the project or late in the project. So we allow 4 years to make sure we have a comfortable period of time to ensure the work can get done without having to go through this process a second time to get additional time at the end of the period we would first get. The other intersections are going to benefit from traffic signal improvements, new controllers in some cases, and a connection fundamentally to the conduit and cable that we're going to run down those two corridors, Warren and Blue Hill, which will bring many of these signals for the first time onto our ability to manage them from our traffic center on the 7th floor of City Hall. And that brings them into the league with over 500 other signals of that nature that we have, which allows our technicians and traffic signal engineers to monitor, adjust remotely, use the video that we'll put in a number of intersections, and allows us to be much more proactive in managing traffic issues in this neighborhood. So the good news that happened earlier this year was that we had a $3.6 million project, and we had only $2.5 million in funding. And so we approached Mass DOT in the spring and told them about this problem, and they were very supportive of this effort and feel it's very important to them because they appreciate what it can do for the bus network in the community. And we worked together and proposed a vote to the Boston MPO for the additional $1.1 million, which sailed through. Everybody was very respectful of our request. And so that got us to the point where we had the $3.6 million in this year's tip. The current advertisement date is September 8th. And as you probably recall from our past presentations, the federal government requires that we use the federal fiscal year. And so we're kind of getting very close to the end of the federal fiscal year with money that's in this year's program. And we've been getting great cooperation both from PFC, from the Mass DOT right-of-way office to get this last piece of business finished so that all the check marks are in place and that we can get the project advertised. Brian's going to present to you the details of the easements, where they are at the 5 locations of the total of 16 we're going to do work through. 5 of them have these issues regarding temporary and permanent easements. There'll be 11 permanent easements and 20 temporary easements. We have conditions in our contracts, and we have a process and procedure which will ensure that access to the properties that we're going to talk about are maintained. There'll be coordination with the contractors and through Mass DOT, who will manage the construction to ensure that no businesses put out of being able to conduct their business. There'd be temporary accommodations in some cases between when they rip the concrete off of the existing sidewalk and when they pour the new concrete to replace that, but there would be temporary accommodations that would have to be made throughout to make sure that everybody stays in business and have people coming in and out of their properties. With that, I'd like to turn over the presentation to AECom, Brian Valancourt, who will walk you through the details of the individual takings.
And I just would have a request, just in the interest of time, Brian, if you could do the 5 permanent only, because we have public materials readily available on all 31 of them, but I don't think we need to go through all 31 of them right now. I think the 5 permanent ones, though, I think would be, is that what I'm?
I think it's 11.
11 permanent? Okay. If you could go through the permanent ones, I think that's
Yes.
of interest to the public interest and I think anyone interested in the temporary ones, it's all available right here in the memo and on the website, so.
Right. Well, good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for
Morning.
having us here today. The process we follow is guided by the federal regulations, the Uniform Relocation Assistance and Real Property Policies Acquisition Act of 1970 and Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 79. We're in full compliance with both the federal law and the state law. The following tenements are paramount under both policies. One, treat individuals fairly, encourage acquisition by agreement, have at least 3 meaningful contacts with each property owner, and minimize litigation. For all the easements we are presenting before you here today, we have achieved that with every property owner. In fact, we've gone beyond that, and we've had multiple phone calls, emails, in-person visits, and mailings with each of the property owners. We submitted a detailed project and information package to each property owner that was sent by certified mail. We had appraisals and review appraisals conducted by Massachusetts licensed certified appraisers. Those were subsequently reviewed and concurred with by the assessing department. We conducted individual owner site visits, and then an offer of just compensation and a negotiation period occurred in July, and that 30-day negotiation period concluded on August 13th. All substantive issues have been addressed. And with that, I'll go into the permanent easements as requested. I will need to skip through portions of the presentation, but basically to start off with, this is an illustration of at Blue Hill Ave and Bard Street and Woodward Avenue. The gray highlights the area of the portion of the intersection of the street where there'll be pavement rehabilitation. The yellowish area are the sidewalks and wheelchair ramps that'll be replaced at the crosswalks, bringing them up to full compliance. And then there'll also be full traffic signals replaced at this location. At 1137 Blue Hill Avenue, permanent easement XE3C is 18 square feet, and this illustrates this triangular portion right here in front, which is on the private property. That's a permanent sidewalk easement that is being obtained so that we can maintain into perpetuity a fully accessible path from the wheelchair ramp that's going to be constructed here and another wheelchair ramp here. The design engineer has minimized the size of the easements in all locations. We've gone through an exercise with them, and this is as small as they can make it. And as Deputy Commissioner Gallulli stated earlier, the contractor and the Mass DOT resident engineer will be working together and coordinating with the property owner to minimize the amount of time and duration of the work right in front of the entryway to the store. Then at 1143 Blue Hill Avenue, we have another permanent easement, and once again, it's for sidewalk access, so a accessible path can be maintained from the replacement wheelchair ramp right here, and then there'll be another wheelchair ramp right here, and we have to maintain an accessible path of travel, and that's done by acquiring the sidewalk easement. This is another example of where we have a permanent sidewalk easement right in front of a storeway because the building faces are so close to the street. Likewise, at 6 Livingstone Street, this is another one that's permanent easement XE2C of 6 square feet. At 6 Livingstone, this is XE12C, 8 square feet, another permanent sidewalk easement. At 115 Warren Street, for the permanent easement XE9C, this is the largest permanent easement on the, for the entire project at 661 square feet. And it's needed so that a wheelchair ramp and the traffic signal equipment and the loop detector can be placed and maintained on this portion of the street right here. And then immediately behind that is a temporary easement for construction access to facilitate the construction. Then at 135 Dudley, on the other portion of the street to the right of it, we have another permanent easement, XE10C, of 718 square feet, and this is for the installation of traffic signal conduit and the permanent wheelchair ramp on the right side. At XE11C at 84 Warren Street, we have another permanent easement of 252 square feet. It's for the, once again, it's a sidewalk easement for the wheelchair ramp that will be installed here and the other new wheelchair ramp that will be constructed here. And it'll also contain the traffic signal equipment, which is currently on private property. At 515 Warren Street, the private property extends all the way out to the front here, and for the permanent easement XE8C, it's 51 square feet. It's once again for sidewalk access, so the wheelchair ramp and the accessible path can traverse this area. And then we have one more permanent easement at 1080 Blue Hill Avenue, and it's a very small strip to maintain an accessible path of travel on either side of the building here, and it's all of 28 square feet. And then the last one is this permanent easement at 1096 Blue Hill Avenue. It's easement XE5C. It's 5 square feet. There's just this very little narrow triangular strip right in front where we need the permanent easement to maintain the full width of the sidewalk and accessible path to travel.
How wide does a legal sidewalk have to be?
Minimum, I believe, is 6 feet, but what drives a lot of these permanent easements, sidewalk easements, is the fact that we need an accessible path around the wheelchair ramp itself. Once you get up to the level landing, you then need to have the accessible path to travel.
Thank you. Any questions from the commissioners?
Not a question, but more of a comment. Looking at 135 Dudley Street, the permanent easement with D&D. I would, not to hold this up, but since that site will never in the future be a housing site or anything else, one should probably consider that being transferred from D&D to Public Works jurisdiction and so forth, because it's in essence a street, but I don't want to, for the sake of this vote, no, just, but something to think about in the future.
Good point for the minutes, Commissioner. Any other questions, Commissioner?
Nope.
No, I'll make a motion that we approve.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. This vote is approved. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you. This meeting is adjourned.